when it comes to the unboxing experience itself, it's less about, okay, here is the box, here is the person receiving the box, but it's really what is the story I'm trying to tell? What is the narrative? Why should people care? And why would that be enticing to the influencer to not just open it, but talk about it? And the goal here is not just for them to open, because that drives very limited engagement, I would say, but to then have it on their radar and then have them incorporate it into their lifestyle, into their routine, depending on what the product is. So it's really about how do you make it interesting? How do you make it relevant? So personalization, storytelling, education, all of these things become what truly matters. Because without that, it's just a box, and every brand can sell the box, but how do you make it impactful? How do you make it memorable? How do you make it long lasting?
Hello, I'm Mike Ryan. I'm the Chief Networking Officer at PIMS, and welcome to our second season of Minutes with Mike. Now in my 33rd year at PIMS, I've had the privilege of partnering with companies both large and small, supporting their PR and marketing through customized fulfillment and distribution that delivers measurable impact on their brand perception, boosts positive affinity, and fuels their overall brand performance. And throughout my career, I've had the chance to work alongside many talented folks. This is their story. On this show, we'll sit down with some of the world's top marketing and business thought leaders to learn more about their success, how they got there, how marketing helped them achieve their goals, what strategies they used, and what inspires them. Please join me on this journey as we learn from those who are changing the way we think about business. So sit back, enjoy. You're listening to Minutes with Mike.
Welcome, everybody, to our episode of Minutes with Mike. Today, my very special guest, Maria Karr. Maria, welcome to the program.
Hi, Mike. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
Maria is a marketing, PR, communications extraordinaire, founder, entrepreneur. She's kind of got many, many hats that she wears, and I can't wait to dive into it. So, Maria, you have a bit of a unique start in this world of ours, this beauty world of ours. Like, how did it all begin with you? Like, what was the first thing that sort of popped into your head that said, I want to go in this direction? Were you planning your education in your youth to kind of go in this direction? Did you always think you were going to, you've done in-house, you've done PR, you've done pretty much everything, but like, what was your initial focus? Where was it something completely different? Where did you want to be? Where did you start it?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. I do have a story to tell. Well, not necessarily a story, but, there is a bit of context behind all of that. So even before I came to the US, which was more than 19 years ago at this point, before I even got to the US, I had this idea that I would like to work in marketing and communications. I did not study marketing and communications. I studied linguistics. And in my hometown, this whole function of PR, marketing, beauty world, that simply did not exist. I'm
Right.
from, a relatively small town in the middle of Russia. So that just simply was not a reality. So when I moved to the US, I went to study communications, and my first gig out of college was actually in human resources that tied into communications, but was not necessarily your marketing and PR path. And the industry was also very different. I was in entertainment. I started working at HBO. So that led me to my first PR gig at New York Film Festival, which I loved so much. But then somehow I landed in beauty and CPG and consumer lifestyle. So my first PR, like beauty PR role, was at an agency called Ink and Roses, a small boutique PR firm in the heart of New York City. And that's where my kind of PR and marketing and beauty career began. And I spent some time on the agency side, which was wonderful. But I've always wanted to go deeper into a brand, to have that connection, to really dive into the nitty-gritty of it all. So a few years after being on the agency side, my former clients at Amore Pacific invited me to join the team in-house to establish the North American integrated marketing communications function, leading PR, influencer. Well, influencer was a bit of a different term back then, obviously not at the scale where we are with the influencer space right now, but still and building out the team, building out the function, and really uniting the brands under one umbrella. Because when I joined the company, it was at that inflection point. K-beauty was entering the US. K-beauty movement was growing so much. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity because I was there at that key moment and I could really shape that narrative, not just for the company, but then in general, what K-beauty truly means, what the ingredients, the formulation, like everything that goes with that. So that was a fantastic opportunity. I spent a few years there and I get so inspired by introducing international beauty products to the US consumer. I think like K-beauty experience, that was truly wonderful. And that was also the time when I went to Russia to run a marathon. I was a runner back then, and I just felt it was so symbolic that I could run it in my home country. So I went there, that was 2019, and I just started to think about the beauty products that were available there and not available here in the US. And I saw that white space. I saw that huge opportunity that, the products were fantastic. The formulations were very strong, botanically driven, really good products. But then no one in the United States has heard of them.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, right? Like, so when I did my research on you, and of course I've known you for a while, and one of the questions I definitely wanted to ask because I'm just really intrigued about it. So you're growing up in this small town in Russia. Obviously, you're privy to beauty products, but the way that you hear about them, read about them, purchase them is vastly different than what's available on this side, right? So
Mhm.
growing up, like, what was your idea of like, what was brand exposure like back then?
Well, you also have to keep in mind it was the 90s, right? So post-Soviet Russia in the 90s, that was a very different landscape, just from a retailer perspective, from the branding perspective, just from the availability perspective. There was a lot of scarcity of resources back then. And we had to rely on some homemade remedies, on something very basic. So the assortment that I saw when I went there in 2019 had nothing to do with the assortment that I grew up with, because obviously those modern formulations were top notch, like really technologically advanced, great ingredients, great packaging. So this is why I get so inspired, because that was nothing what I experienced as a child or
Right.
growing up as in my younger years. And I just felt that something was missing and that the larger world, and especially people here in the US, deserve to know about that. So I made it my mission to introduce them to the US consumers. I launched my own discovery platform called Rumore Beauty, and I operated it for about a couple of years. And while doing that, I was also working with a lot of emerging brands, mostly D2C, some retailer focused as well, but mostly D2C, to help them gain visibility. Because throughout my career, whether on the agency side and at Amore Pacific, and even running my own business, I realized that gaining visibility is key. You're really moving a product from the concept of, okay, that's the product, it exists, it's on the shelf or it's online, to something that it's hot, I want it now. And how do you bridge that gap? That was really interesting to me. So that's how, in my role at Mesa, I could truly integrate all of those different touch points: PR, influencer, social, corporate visibility, executive visibility. How do you make something that is not just visible, but something that is desirable and something that is hot? So that's been my focus, and this is what I truly love doing.
You kind of grew up with this technology, right? Like, the integrated communications is almost like a,
Mhm, mhm.
a a brand new title, though it's been around for a while. It feels like it's a brand new title. And like you said, like when you were coming up, there was influencer marketing, or the type of distro that you specialize in, at least when working with PIMS, didn't really even exist. So you not
Mhm.
only had to like teach yourself as you were going, right? But you're running a team, in some cases D2C, right? So you have to come up with these ideas as they develop based on this new technology. I wanted to dive a little bit into that. So, one of the things we worked on together and with your team, and it's always been wonderful working with your team because it always seems to have like cutting edge things happening, right? It's just not what happened yesterday that you're redoing in a different way. You always kind of came up with something new and a new way to tell the story. What's your idea on the whole unboxing experience? Like, where do you think that's really developed as a selling tool, right? Like, how do people communicate through that? And like, when you're, whether it was, through Amore Pacific or at Mesa, or however you were sending out this information, what do you think the most important aspect of that is?
I think when it comes to the unboxing experience itself, it's less about, okay, here is the box, here is the person receiving the box, but it's really, what is the story I'm trying to tell? What is the narrative? Why should people care? And why would that be enticing to the influencer to not just open it, but talk about it? And the goal here is not just for them to open, because that drives very limited engagement, I would say, but to then have it on their radar and then have them incorporate it into their lifestyle, into their routine, depending on what the product is. So it's really about, how do you make it interesting? How do you make it relevant? So personalization, storytelling, education, all of these things become what truly matters. Because without that, it's just a box, and every brand can sell the box, but how do you make it impactful? How do you make it memorable? How do you make it long lasting?
Is there a difference? And make this up in my brain as you're answering that question so wonderfully. And working on the agency side and working direct with the brand, is there a different feel and aspect of that? And on my end of the world, I always felt like with agencies, it's very project specific and almost like sort of answering a question that's been brought up or responding to consumer feedback. Whereas on the corporate level, and you're going to tell me differently if I'm wrong, on the corporate level, it's much more of a long-term program that you're developing over time and space. Would you agree with that? Do you think there is a big difference?
I think it truly depends on what that client engagement looks like. So when I was on the agency side, I've always made it my mission to become the extension of the client team, because that way you are really getting the context. You're really getting what the brand is about, it's not just one individual moment in time, but you're really building momentum for the brand. You're really turning those individual activities into that flywheel that, in each of them, they just keep fueling one another. I know that sometimes the agencies engaged on a project by project basis. So here it's really more executional and more transactional, but that's not how I would personally prefer to work. It's really about building that momentum, building that longevity. And I think that's really what's the most successful, really building a partnership with your client, with your vendor, with whoever you're working with. And I think it's just so important to have that relationship, because in this case, you really get to know one another. You know how to build a brand in the most effective way and truly reap the most benefits out of that.
Looking for this quote that I read that you were actually quoting a former boss when you said, you could only pick two of these things: cheap, fast, or quality.
Yes.
All morning as I've been running it over in my brain, I'm like, what? I think I keep changing my mind as to which two are the most important. I'm curious to what your response would be to that, and who could you credit for that? That's a great quote, and I'm just curious.
Oh, yes. Well, that goes back to my Amore Pacific days. The CEO back then and president was Jessica Hansen, and she was the one who introduced me to that quote, and it just really resonated with me. And as I've been going through all of the projects, I was always keeping that running in the back of my head. I'm like, okay, cheap, fast, or good? Like, what do you pick? And I think it depends on the project, right? There is no universal truth, right? Like, of course you want all three always. Like, that's the ideal case
Right.
scenario. But the reality is that you have to choose, you have to compromise somewhere. In most cases, there could be a situation where all three can get together and the stars will align. But oftentimes it's really about picking two, but it depends on the project, right? If you want something, let's say you want to send out a mailer, right? You're doing this seeding initiative. What truly matters, how it also falls into the larger strategy. So I think it's so important to see the bigger picture. Where within the strategy does that opportunity exist? And then, okay, if we need to get it out before the launch is happening in 2 weeks, we have to get it out. Speed is key for us. Or let's say we have a very tight budget and that there is no way to increase that. Then, of course, you have to stick with what you have and then compromise on something else. So yeah, it truly depends on the project. But I think that works like 99% of the time. So even many years later, I've been using that truth quote,
Yeah.
you name it.
It kind of goes on my end. It's universal, really. Doesn't whether you're running warehousing or you're selling cars or or you're doing the beauty and everything. It's kind of a universal thought there. So it kind of tied in
Mhm.
with me. So with your roles, obviously, all of these expenditures are meant to drive sales, right? Everybody wants to get great ROI for whatever it is these budget dollars are being tasked for. On your end, how much of it is sort of feedback through data and analytics that tie in with the different ROI attached to that? And how much of it is gut instinct? And how much of it is from consumer feedback, right? Like just getting word of mouth, whether it's through social aspects or however you're hearing it.
Mhm.
What do you sort of depend on when you're in that role to sort of figure out where those dollars should be best spent?
Great question. And I think it's a combination. So, also looking back in the more traditional PR days during my career, and before the technology, the measurement technology was available, we would go more with the sentiment, right? We would go more with more generic metrics like, okay, this is the placement, all of our key messages are included. There is a picture, there is a link to purchase the product, there is this is how many people saw that. Now the technology is so much more advanced, and we have such a phenomenal opportunity to truly turn marketing and influencer marketing specifically into more of a science project or science opportunity. So, most recently I've been using Creator IQ to truly dive deep into all of the metrics. How many creators did we engage with this month? How many of them were new? How many of them were retained? How many of them were lost? Why are we losing them? Like really starting to ask ourselves those questions. But then also looking at not just the size of the program, but then also how many likes are we generating? How many video views are we generating? What's the EMV stemming out of that? How do we compare to the other brands within that category? So all of those things, and of course you can tweak and you can see what data is the most relevant for your brand or throughout a specific project or specific period in time. But now the data is so important, and I would say that it's still important to trust your gut. Sometimes something does not feel right, regardless of what the number tells you. But the combination of the two is so powerful.
Yeah.
And when it comes to listening to the feedback, listening to the consumers, now it's easier than ever, but also more complex than ever too, because now we have the social channels, we have the direct communication with the users, we have the direct communication with people who purchase, who give it a try, who love it, who hate it. We can hear that. But then also, how do we turn it into a system? How do we not just hear individual thoughts and individual pieces of feedback, but how do we make it cohesive? So I've been really looking into brand advocacy opportunities and brand advocacy platforms. I think that's something that's the future of the social space and the community space, because it's really how do you engage with people who already talk about your product, because then you can make wonders with those groups of people. You
Yeah.
can invite them to focus groups. You can truly make them your ambassadors. They can give you the feedback that maybe your followers won't give you, but then people who are truly engaged, who are in the weeds, who try the product, who know what the brand is about, who have been following your journey for a while. So I think the combination of the three, that's crucial. And now, luckily, we do have the tools to help us decode all of that, because in the past it was very limited, I would say, and we would go with those blind metrics that wouldn't mean much. It would be a number on paper, of course. It's important to show some sort of number, but then it was kind of hard to attribute it to or really decide what it means for your business and how to take it to the next level.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, to that point, there was a time when people would choose, what we called influencers. Now, I think they prefer to be called creators, right? These creators, based upon those metrics, and then you'd have to decide, how much of it's going to be organic, how much of it's going to be paid, and kind of go down that road. Nowadays, there's so much more information, not only more information, but it's more readily available to you. And you mentioned, working with partners like the Creator IQ that adapts this and makes this available to you. Two-part question. How in the past did you choose which was the perfect fit for a creator for you? And how do you think that's evolving now that these creators have become almost like brand advocates of their own, right? A lot of them coming up with their own brands. How did that start, and where do you think that's headed?
Mhm. Yeah, well, needless to say, the evolution has been phenomenal, right? Like you go even 10 years back and where the influencer marketing industry and the whole capability of that and what creators can do for the brand that has changed so much. It truly evolved. And in the past, and actually this is also something that I still use in my, day-to-day work and my practice, is I really look at the creator and see not just the numbers behind their content and what they can do for the brand, but then also, are they truly aligned with what the brand is about? I think having that authenticity locked in from the get-go is key. So, and then on top of that, then you can see, are they more really about building awareness? Because also not every creator is created equal, right? So there are creators who are fantastic because they produce beautiful assets, right? They're so creative, the aesthetic is wonderful. But then it may not convert, but you get great assets and you can partner with them just for that reason. There are creators who are very great at awareness, and this is their forte, right? Like you give them something and they really build the buzz about that. Does it convert? May or may not, right? It depends. But then the awareness is out there. And then there is another type of creators who convert. Their assets may not be your, I don't know, super polished, like whatever, like picture perfect Instagram feed worthy asset, but then they truly convert. And when I had my own business, I saw it firsthand because I was so in the weeds on everything. And I could really go into every single post and see, okay, from that post, I got that many followers and I got that many sales. And from that post, I got X number of outcome. So yeah, it's important to understand what type of creator you are dealing with, but then also what is the objective for the business? Are you trying to convert into sales? Are you trying to build awareness? Or are you gathering content because you need beautiful content across all of your platforms? So from there, you really choose who would you like to work with. But then also there is another layer to that, right? So of course every creator wants to be compensated, and I respect that because that's part of the business. And to your point, I think you said it beautifully, and I do think every creator is a media company of their own. This is a new channel. Like, in the past it was a magazine, right? It was like a Cosmopolitan, it was Allure, it was, I don't know, like all of those great magazines. Now we have hundreds of thousands of them in the face of creators. So each of them is a media platform. So each of them has a channel. Some are more popular, some are a bit less, more up and coming. But regardless, they are the loudspeakers. And of course, they would like to be compensated for their work. But what I like to do first is I like to see where that affinity exists, where the audience of those creators, regardless how big or small, where whether or not they are really in tune with the brand. And then if they are, then we can talk about graduating them onto that next level. So I would not start a relationship with just a paid post or a paid campaign. I think to me, it's really more about finding, are you in line with what this brand is about? Is your audience in line with what this brand is about? And then also understanding where the creator falls. Is it creative? Is it awareness? Is it conversion? And then we take it from there and see what type of opportunity may exist from a paid perspective. So yeah, that's been my philosophy, and I think it works. It worked before, and it also works now, even if we have the metrics available, but it's still important to nail those elements first.
Really well said. You got me thinking too. It wasn't too long ago that, your choice was sell things through your website or you engage in retail, right? That was it. You want to get on the shelf, you want to get on the right shelf. And in beauty world, whether it's Sephora or Ulta, you were trying to engage that world for sales. Now, in the blink of an eye, we are talking about social selling, right? And how that works. It also wasn't too long ago that, like, my mother's generation was watching QVC and Home Shopping Network, and it was kind of frowned upon. Like, I'd walk in the room and she'd have these people pitching them, whatever it is. And I'm like, who the hell's on this, right? Now, I catch myself watching it at home because Beekman is such a great product, but they do such a great job at that social selling aspect, and they're constantly on the Home Shopping Network. And, I've had guests come on here and just tell us, like, this is the new thing. This is what brands are leaning towards as part of it, right? We can't discount retail, although the people have their opinions on that. You can't discount other ways of adapting to sales. But what is your take on social selling and how that's been adapting and where that's going? And what's your thoughts on retail exposure?
Oh, that's a great question. Lots of great questions, Mike. Thank you. So, what do you think about social selling and the retail strategy in general? So, I think, well, multiple things, right? The first thing is the retail landscape is evolving constantly. Like, to your point, it used to be the D2C or the retailer. Now, social commerce is playing a very important role. And also, Amazon is a kind of like a category of its own. So, I think social selling is really more about discovery. It's like there are so many creators, there is such an opportunity to gain that initial visibility for your brand and then give the products a try. I see that it's growing. I think the discovery piece is very important. But then also, retail is still out there and it's still important
Right.
because people also want to try it. People want to, I don't know, like sample a skincare product. They want to smell it. They want to feel I don't know, how it feels on their skin, what the color looks like, how it works with their skin tone, what the scent is about, how it wears. So people do still shop at retail. And D2C too. I think there is a lot that is like a lot of value in discovering and shopping through D2C for consumers. Uh, There is also that connection with the brand that we talked about. There is that layer of education. There is that authenticity and finding that dynamic with the brand. Let's say if you're a fan of something, you do want to get to know them a bit better. From a brand perspective, though, it's very interesting because the barriers to enter in the beauty space are now lower than ever. And in the past, right, like even when I had my own D2C platform, you have to build a website, you have to invest in that. It's a process, it's a lot of creative exploration. There's just a lot that is going on. With social commerce, it's so much more accessible and it's much easier for a brand to enter and sell their products now from a distribution perspective than it was ever before. Of course, it comes at a cost, right? Like, of course, selling on TikTok or other social platforms, it comes with a cost, but so is D2C, so is the retailer.
Mhm.
So again, it goes back to the strategy. What is the strategy for your brand? Where do your consumers shop? Are they heavy TikTok shoppers? Are they leaning more towards more traditional channels? Are they more digital? So it's really answering those questions. Where is your audience? Who are you as a brand? What is your long-term strategy? And why are you tapping into various channels? Because again, if you want more discovery, maybe you start with social commerce. And then once you have your opportunity to prove the concept, once you have the opportunity to gain that velocity, then you expand into a retailer. You already have the proof that this is the product that is highly desirable. Or
Yes.
then maybe you go on Amazon and you also make it convenient because literally everyone shops on Amazon. So you make it very accessible to people. So again, really thinking about your brand and then where the strategies and where the customers are.
Some people say that if you have an iPhone, right, you're your own studio, right? You can sell right from there. And using things like TikTok Shop, or Meta, whatever platform you're on, you can, do these type of sales. My question is, with this new technology, and of course, I feel like every episode I ask a question about AI just because it's so relevant and it's so new and happening, especially somebody like you that's, seen a lot of technologies come. Some go, but some come and make your world a lot easier. How do you think this ties in? Like, what would your plan be if you were launching a new product or engaging a new product idea right now? How would AI tie into that? Would you use it as part of that data and analytics reporting method? Would you tie it in as part of your, digital experience when you send things out? What would you use that most for?
I think AI, it's such an interesting topic, and there are so many ways to use technology. So let's say even a couple of years ago at Maesa, we started to explore our creative assets and generating them through AI. And not just the individual assets, but truly building those worlds for the fragrance brand called Finery. Because, fragrance is one of those categories where you you can hear about it, you can see it, but you cannot fully immerse yourself
Right.
in it. So that whole creative exploration was about allowing people to immerse themselves into those worlds generated with the help of AI. And those assets, they lived on our retailer channels, they lived on our social. We even brought it to life through an experiential activation in the heart of New York City and then in Los Angeles. So really leaning more towards that creative part. And that turned out to be such a cost-saving initiative, that turned out to be such a time-saving initiative. And this is something, again, like talking about the barriers of entry. In the past, you had to hire a photographer, you had to do a professional photo shoot, renting a studio and models and hair and makeup and props and lighting and all of those things that come with that. That takes time, that takes a lot of manpower to plan and then execute, and of course the dollars. So now with the help of AI, it's really reducing your time spent doing all of that, but then it also increases the output and you can have much more control over it. So I think creative is definitely the direction that is important. If I were to launch something, I would maybe not fully go with AI because I still would love to have some human element, but I think a chunk of it could be allocated to technology. Analytics. I know there are lots of companies out there that are helping you decipher the data. And I remember I was watching the customer behavior on my platform when I had it. I would be like literally sitting there like, okay, they clicked on this page, then they switched to that page. Like why? What made them switch? Where did they look? Where did their mouse go? Like really thinking through all of these things, but doing it manually because technology was not there back then. Now the technology is there. So that's, really mapping out your customer journey. What is not working? Because also, once the creator recruits customers to visit your site, that experience has to be fully optimized. And that experience also has to be tailored as to what is clicking with the customer and what is not, what is converting and what is not. Why did they add it to the basket but did not purchase? Why did they go to this page versus the other page? And then having answers to all of these questions, or at least having data to support that. I think this is gold. This is such valuable information that will eventually give you better outcome because it's, you avoid the human error, you avoid that human interpretation, but then it's also time saving and it's cost saving in the long run too.
Great answer. You have your reputation as no nonsense. You want it the way you want it, and we would love it no other way, right? Like we appreciate from our perspective when we work with clients that are knowledgeable, but they have high expectations, right? Because I think with PIMS, and I'm sure I'm going to ask you about your other partners, right? Like there are certain expectations that clients have of us, and the way they want things is the way they want things, and this is why they want it. And knowing those expectations helps us raise the bar and reach those heights that they want us to go. What is your vetting process? And we've been lucky enough to work with you along the way in your career, and we thank you for that, certainly. But like, I'm always curious, what's your personal vetting process when you're working? You need a partner in a certain space, whether it is warehousing or shipping or distribution or any aspect of the business. What's your personal vetting process on how you choose a company? Of course, price is always a mainstay. Everybody has to get it for a good price. But going back to that quality question we talked about earlier, you get what you pay for, right? So people are always want the right price, but they also want all this included. What is your vetting process when dealing with vendors on who you choose to work with, who you allow in your world?
Wow, good question. Hard one to answer too, because I think it truly depends on what type of partner. But then also I think partner is the word I would like to bold and underline and put it in like bigger font, because having a partner is so much different than just having a vendor.
Yes.
Because, when it's a partnership, and this is why I personally, when I was on the agency side, I made it my mission to become a partner to my clients versus just, an agency or support or vendor, like really becoming the extension of their team. And I think what like, at least from my experience, I've always felt that PIMS, you guys have been that extension. And we worked on a lot of projects while at Amore Pacific. And actually, I met David like 12, 13 years ago when I was in my first job at Ink and Roses. And back then, like, as we talked about, the whole influencer realm was so different. And it was really more about warehousing of the product. And there was some occasional seeding activity. But we met back then, and then I just saw a true partner in him. He was always so responsive and really spot on, and also helping me figure it out because he was in his role for a while back then, but I was just starting out. So I was really looking for that partnership to help navigate the process, to really understand and how to make it better, how to optimize. And I just enjoyed that collaboration so much. And then when I joined Amore Pacific, to me, it was a no-brainer that PIMS would be our partner when it came to seeding activity. And I know then we did some projects with developing some creative together. So there were many, many opportunities that followed. But to me, of course, quality is key, right? Like that's an non-negotiable. Quality is key, having the right value, right? Like having your investment being worth the outcome.
Right.
So that's very important. But I think the most critical part is partnership. That you cannot just, unless you have a true partner in your agency, in your vendor, like you cannot just achieve any good outcomes. Because it's also, like now especially, I feel like, at PIMS, you guys have seen so many activations that brands are bringing to life. You have so much experience. It's like really, some brands may be looking to you for expertise and helping them navigate and helping them guide, especially newer brands or brands that may not be as well versed in those larger scale seeding activities or, creative options. So it's like, how do you establish that rapport, and then how you guide it, it's like building the dynamic. That's so important.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. But we're coming close on time, but there was one question I did want to sort of finish with. One of the things you also do well, and this is going to be a compliment directly for you. So you're busy. You have a lot going on. You're a mother. You're a businesswoman. You have a lot going on. And I always see you at all the important events, right? Like we just ran into each other again at a previous
Yes.
event, but you always take the time. And I can't say that about everybody, right? Not everybody makes time to go to these events, to keep up with your network of people, to help build that community, whether it's, through an organization like the CEW or a vendor partner that's having a, panel discussion, being on panels yourself, or however it is. You always make the time to make sure that you're present at these events. As the chief networking officer, oftentimes I'm there as well. And I always think to myself when I don't see certain people, I'm like, how are they missing this? Like they didn't get to that one. They didn't get to, and how are they missing this? But there's always that small group of community that I hold dear, that I see at just about all the important events, and you're on that list. So a compliment to you. But how do you make the time for that? And why is it so important to you?
Thank you, Mike. So I think it is important. It's important for multiple reasons. Reason number one, you are keeping up with your network. You are staying in touch with people who are part of the industry, who are moving the industry forward. And sometimes you never know where the conversation can take you. It can result in a new business opportunity, can result in a new insight, just like really learning something new, or I don't know, just like discovering something for yourself. I'm very curious by nature. So for me, having the conversations, meeting people, exploring the content at those events is so important, because that's how you really keep in touch and keep your finger on the pulse. But in addition to the people aspect, it's really the information, because the industry is evolving so much. We said it multiple times throughout the conversation. So how do you stay in touch with it? How do you continue evolving with it? Because what worked half a year from now may not work tomorrow.
Right.
So it's very important. So really the content and the people, the two pieces, that's so integral for me. But of course, being a mother, with working, with doing like all of the things, it's important to prioritize. So for me, it comes down to prioritization. Like, where can I get the most valuable opportunity? Where can I get the most valuable information? Where will I meet the best people in the industry? So it also comes down to that. But yeah, I enjoy doing that, and I think it's helpful, and it has been very helpful throughout my career to really keep my finger on the pulse.
Maria Karr, this has been wonderful. You are fantastic. I can't wait to keep following your career and see what's next for you.
Thank you, Mike. Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I'm very excited.